Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study of the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Proverbs chapter 19, and this is a wonderful, wonderful chapter there. A lot of good proverbs as we have been seeing, words of wisdom. As I said before, the wisdom here is wisdom that we could walk away with and immediately put in our lives. That's the most value that is the value of wisdom, the most valuable wisdom. Not just sitting around talking about speculations, opinions, views, philosophies, but what can we take with that? By the way, there's nothing wrong with that, like healthy debates and all that kind of stuff. But what Proverbs is dealing with here is what can you take and put in your life. All right, let's get to it. Proverbs chapter 19. Um, Verse 1 says, better a poor man who lives with integrity than someone who has deceitful lips and is a fool. Now, sometimes you wonder how people come up with life values. In other words, think about this. When someone says like something like this, better the poor man who lives with his integrity. Now, if you're an evil man or a wicked man, you might say, no, as long as I got my money, I'm cool, I'm fine. But notice here, God is the one who has set what the values of life are. So better the poor man who lives with integrity than someone who has deceitful lips and is a fool. Now, so even if you're wealthy, okay, but the biggest thing is that if you have deceitful lips and is a fool, verse 2, even zeal is not good without knowledge, and the one who acts hastily sins. Now, this is something I could relate to. Zeal is not good without knowledge. When I became a Christian, and especially in my, I had great zeal for the Lord. I had great zeal to know God, to know His Word, to learn His Word. I had great zeal to do what I saw the examples of leadership around me. What I did not have is knowledge. So, for example, the one pastor who, doing this was the late 70s, before the term megachurch became popular, he had a large church, a large church. And he was the type of person that he spoke his mind. He spoke with, some people even accused him of being prideful. Some people accused him of being abusive, but he wasn't. He was in his church. The problem is young men like myself who saw that with not knowing he did not speak that way when he wasn't in his church. He didn't talk that way when he was in someone else's church. In his church, he was very forceful. He very not belligerent. I want to refrain from that. But he spoke his mind. But he spoke his mind in his church. I emulated that. However, the folly of that was no one was following me. And people turned me off faster than they can flip a switch. Okay? And even to this day, there are people, and we're talking over 40 years ago. If you, some of those people that you see back then will go, oh man, Okay? So, um, so zeal without knowledge is just not good. And that is so true. Having a zeal about something without knowing, having the wisdom. Verse 3, a man's own foolishness leads him astray, yet his heart rages against the Lord. You ever heard the term, I'm mad at God? hmm. And just think about this verse right here. A man's own foolishness leads him astray, yet his heart rages against God. Think about that for a moment. How many times people have been angry at God for something, whatever, but yet in a lot of cases it was their own foolishness. It was the own foolishness that led you not to act on something. You can't blame God when the sheriff comes to put you out when you didn't pay your mortgage, pay your taxes. You can't be angry at God when your body is telling you something is wrong, but you just ignore it. And then when sickness hits you, you're angry. When you're sitting up with diabetes or dialysis, you can't. This is what he's saying right here. Sometimes you go back, is it our own foolishness? Verse 4. Wealth attracts many friends, but a poor man is separated from his friends. Again, the wisdom here is astounding, isn't it? Isn't that right? Isn't that true? If you got 7 zeros behind your name, you're gonna have friends. You're gonna have friends. But if you don't, man, you can have all the wisdom in the world and no one's listening to you. Verse 5 says, a false witness will not go unpunished, and one who utters lies will not escape. Now, you will note that there is no time limit on this. In other words, when will they not go unpunished? How long? You know, and sometimes you don't always see it. You don't always see when they get their end. Sometimes you do. And sometimes it's good when you see people get their just due. Verse 6. Many seek a ruler's favor, and everyone is friend of one who gives gifts. I cannot help but to think about one Chicago mayor candidate. He also was a Senate candidate. He was also running for president. I think he was also running for governor. And he was a millionaire. And one of the things he'd do is he'd show up and start giving out gas pumps, food, and all of that. I'm being kind of funny here, but notice what he says. Everyone is friends to one who gives gifts. I'm also thinking about I'm thinking about one particular rapper who was known for his generosity, and everybody was friends with him until he went broke, and then he had no friends. Verse 7. All the brothers of a poor man hate him. How much more do his friends keep their distance from him, meaning the poor? He may pursue them with words, but they are not there. Verse 8. The one who acquires good sense loves himself. One who safeguards understanding finds success. Again, how much true this is. If you acquire good sense, we could even say common sense. Common sense has to be taught. Common sense has to be taught. And sometimes we just assume that people have this, what's called common sense. It's not. Common sense is not common, it has to be taught. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that in my immaturity of my youth, I had a good heart, but no common sense. People would go, that's common sense, but it's not if you don't know it. If you don't know these things, if you've never been taught these things. And I'll say this: shame on the elders who do not teach this common sense. Notice the one who acquire good sense. Shame on those who are in the position, but you don't teach. All right. Verse 9. A false witness will not go unpunished, and the one who utters lies perishes. Verse 10, luxury is not appropriate for a fool. How much less for a slave to rule over princes? That's kind of interesting here. Think about the lottery. Enough said on that. You give a fool $100 million, $200 million, and guess what? They blow it. But notice this term here, a slave to rule over princes. He's going to later say, well, I'm going to paraphrase, God help you when a slave gets to rule over you. The person who was once a slave now is in power. Verse 11. A person's insight gives him patience, and his virtue is to overlook an offense. So now, this is true when a person has a good, godly character. Be patient with people, but you also overlook offenses. Verse 12, a king's rage is like a roaring lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. A foolish son, now I'm skipping over the king's rage because most of us are not kings, so you could probably say leadership as well. I guess you can apply that to there being a boss. A king's rage is like a roaring lion, but his favor is like the dew on the grass. In other words, feed that nourishes. Verse 13, a foolish son is his father's ruin, and a wife's nagging is an endless dripping. Now remember, we said, he that finds a wife finds a good thing, obtains favor of the Lord. Well, the other side of that, a wife's nagging is an endless dripping, like drip, drip, drip. Verse 14, a house and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a sensible wife is from the Lord. Now think about that right there. Notice the contrast there. One from a wife's nagging to one who is sensible, who comes from the Lord. I think if anything, if you were to ever want a answer to the question, what is a good spouse? I'm going to extend this and say spouse. One that God gives you that is sensible. Now, sometimes with men, what attracts us the most is a good-looking woman, right? A good-looking woman until she opens her mouth. There is a lot here that we could explore. There is a lot that we can explore here in terms of the difference between a good wife and a bad wife. Okay. Now I'm going to expand this to say also between a husband as well, because if you say if I was to be single right now, but when I was single, one of the things that I prayed for was a wife that came from the Lord. Because I got to the place where, Lord, I don't know how to ask for a wife. I don't know how to, But what I'm going to say is, if you send me a wife, if she comes from you, then I'm good. There are people that, in their foolishness, they come out, they draw up a list. They draw up a list of what they like in a wife or a spouse, a husband or a wife, right? So he has to look a certain way, certain height, and they have all of the characteristics that selfishly they want. In other words, these are all the things that we want selfishly. So, Lord, give me all of that. Now, the one thing they don't ask for, or they don't seem to bother, is, well, what is it? This perfect person that comes from God. God had said, okay, I'm going to give you the most perfect person that I'm going to give you. Right? That's what you're asking for. The most perfect person. And yet you never ask, well, what do you think God is giving that person to? I'm going to give this perfect person, but who am I giving it to? Now, if you are a woman, you can be the most beautiful woman, because I'm going to say, look at all of the beautiful women and compare their relationships. Look at all of them. Uh, all of the beautiful women, compare their relationships. Where are they now? What do they have now? And is it their beauty that's keeping them? Because if it is, why do they have multiple partners? Meaning over the span of time. So the first thing he says that a nagging wife. So men, if you're looking, verse 14 again says, a sensible wife is from the Lord. That Lord, send me a sensible woman. Not a perfect woman, because no one's perfect. But that sensibility here includes a godly character. A godly character. Okay? A good character. Kind character. That's what you want. That's what you want. And if you're blessed, notice he says, a sensible wife is from the Lord. So then go back to chapter 18. He who finds a wife, right, finds a good thing and obtains favor of the Lord. And now he says, you can have wealth, a house and wealth are inherited from fathers, or family wealth, that's fine. But then, can you have a good wife? Excuse me. Can you have a good wife? All right, I think I'm going to stop right here and now pick it up and finish chapter 19 in the next study. Uh, um, but again, just great words of wisdom here. All right, guys, see you in the next study.